Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. So, my friends, I recently was thinking about a phrase that is kind of ubiquitous across the American political discussion, particularly if you're in certain circles, like certain anarchist circles. And this phrase has oftentimes been taken as to be a model of anti-authoritarianism. It is seen widely in many Black Lives Matter and Antifa protests of the police, many of their social justice initiatives. And this phrase is none other than ACAB. All cops are BASTARDS. I don't want to use curse words on this channel, but that is the phrase. And I've heard this phrase myself when I've been in discourse with a few people, both on the left and the right, and I thought about it. Now, a reasonable person would initially think you cannot make such a broad generalization based on anecdotes or a few things of that sort. And I think that is the correct initial impression to have, but it is not the most epistemically knowledge-based, rigorous impression to have. Of course, our initial impressions are supposed to be a gateway towards broader knowledge. This is why the scientific method exists. It looks at a few things in nature, makes a hypothesis, then goes about testing those assumptions. So we have to have that inquisitive and investigative spirit as human beings, as political observers, if we want to actually get to the root cause and understand things. So this inquisitive spirit took me to GQ, which doesn't always take me there. And I was reading this article here, and it kind of goes over the anatomy of this phrase, all cops are, you know what. But particularly, this is what grabbed me, and this is what the argument I've heard from a lot of people. It said, the best defense of ACAB might come from anarchists who have been preaching ACAB for decades. As one group put it, it's not that all cops are you-know-what, but rather that all cops are bounded, not bad people themselves, but institutionally trapped in a system that is inherently oppressive. Where have we heard this rhetorical gobbledygook before? I know where I've heard it. I've heard it deep within the annals of the literati, of the left-wing literati, and a lot of left-wing thinkers who want to assign values to tools and then pretend as if human beings are controlled by those tools, when they rather misplace the location of values, and we'll get to that in a moment. But when I heard this initially, I was curious, so I went to the website of this GQ article linked, and it explains this. All cops are not you-know-what, but they are bounded. All cops are bounded. And this one goes to say this: a cop goes to work as a cop, not as an individual. They cease to be John Murphy and become Garda B203, Anonymous Law Enforcement Officer 71032. ACAP means that no matter how nice the cop is individually, they must break strikes, attack social movements, execute homophobic, sexist, and racist laws, deport and evict people, and even torture and murder, because that is what the police do. Feel free to make a conscientious objection, you will be fired. So, let's understand why the intellectual foundations of this term, these arguments are simply false. Number one, institutions are tools. They are not living organisms. Institutions are simply tools in the hands of certain people. An institution is not inherently evil unless the content of the institution is lathered with evil stuff, evil principles. So, the Third Reich as an institution was inherently evil because the content of the Third Reich, its foundations, were lathered with evil stuff. But someone would also say that America, the institutions in America, are inherently evil because the institutions incidentally took up slavery. Well, guess what? The same institutions that took up slavery are the same institutions that are founded on the basis of human equality, perfect human freedom, rationality as a prerequisite of resistance, and all these things which defined and animated the spirits of the American experiment. And those institutions are still alive today. And guess what? A lot of them are doing things which protect the posterity and existence of current and future black folk. The same institutions, the same government. The government hasn't really changed. It has had more departments. It has had a little bit more reform. But the structure of the government, the tool of the government, is still the same. But the people are what have changed. To treat institutions as organic entities is to commit a fallacy of misattribution, and it is to endeavor in a falsehood, because institutions themselves are simply tools. By definition, they are tools. So to say institutional racism or institutional violence is simply, again, to use an incidental idea and then attribute that to the institution. It is to condemn the institution by proximity, not by principle. Condemn institutions by principle, not proximity. So, if we've accepted this axiom, let's move down to the real issue, the individual cops themselves. Now, within this structure or institution that ACAB assumes is inherently oppressive, and I've already explained that that's not necessarily true, it may be incidentally true, but not necessarily true, officers in America have had a very long tradition of officerial discretion. In fact, this very long tradition of officerial discretion is why Justice Scalia and the Supreme Court agreed that cops have zero liability and zero responsibility to you. If they don't answer a call and quick enough, if they don't protect you, they have no liability in that matter. Because again, cops have officerial discretion. This is the entire foundational ethos of many police departments. We will, of course, they can't choose not to enforce everything. If you murder someone, a cop kind of has to go ahead and say, okay, you murdered someone, and that's bad, we got to arrest you. But in many, many cases, including drug crimes, and including a lot of the social laws, like, the obscenity laws and the sodomy laws, some of which are still on the books, obscenity laws particularly, sodomy laws were declared unconstitutional in 2001, or 2000, in Lawrence v. Texas. But some of which are still on the book, some of these social laws are still on the book, there are many cops who do not enforce them. In fact, there are a plethora of laws which are not only patently ridiculous, but fundamentally anachronistic that many cops do not support. But the thesis here says that you have to support these laws if you're in the system, which again misattributes the placement of values. And it ignores a feature of the very system it critiques. So not only is ACAB a philosophy which doesn't understand the true nature of institutions, and not only is ACAB a philosophy which doesn't understand a feature of American policing, which is officerial discretion, ACAB is a philosophy, and this is my third point, which tries to use those two prior misunderstandings to inform the agency, inform the free will of officers, and then indict them by proximity, which is, of course, an associative fallacy. It's an association fallacy. Okay, since this cop is near this institution or in this institution, they have to be bad because they're doing bad things. Which also, by the way, my fourth point, assumes that cops do bad things or police do bad things all the time. They don't. Now look, we can have serious conversations about civil asset forfeiture, about qualified immunity, about blight laws and zoning laws, about nuisance laws, about all kind of things that I think need to be the subjects of rigorous, epistemically and philosophically rigorous police reform. But you cannot, and you will not, in my presence at least, indict people simply because they are associated with an institution, especially an institution that has nothing inherently to do with oppression, racism, homophobia, or any of the adjectives that you people who use ACAB and who put it out in the air, who put it out in the world, claim these institutions have to do with. You will not do that because it is not correct. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm more concerned about making sure that I'm correct than making sure my independent biases are affirmed. Yet ACAB is the synthesis of a mind that wants to confirm their individual biases. So no, all cops are not bounded. All cops are not, you know what? You have to evaluate cops as individuals because values emerge from the individual. Values do not emerge from institutions. Individuals implement values into institutions, and they use them as a mechanism, as a vessel to further those values. Values are spiritual qualities which manifest in the human being and then go out through our will. But of course, ACAB undermines and suggests that the will itself is suspect and not really powerful. And when you have a sort of statement like that, which again does not conform to reality, you have a term which should be relegated, in my opinion, the dustbin of history, and it should not be used in any serious conversation about police reform, institutions, oppression, or values, because in my opinion, this term is limited in its ability to ascertain any of those things. Think on it. My friends, I love you. If you love me, patreon.com/VitalCWatson or PayPal official cwatson@gmail.com, or you can join the locals, christianwatson.locals.com. I love you guys so much. Oh, my Discord too. Join my Discord too. It's in the link down below. I love you guys so much, and thank you for watching me and supporting me, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.